I'll be very, very, very concise on this one. Vice I really enjoyed. It's a dark comedy about Dick Cheney and particularly the Bush Cheney era, and it's controversial or whatever in that it hits a very narrow segment of an audience. In that, if you were very supportive of that era and you kind of are okay with them taking a few shots at it for comedy, you're good. If you were antagonistic towards that era, but you can laugh it off through the sort of the dark comedy part of it, you'll like it. But if you're supportive and don't get the jokes, it'll look like a hit piece. If you're antagonistic and don't think that time period was funny, you won't find any jokes funny. So kind of goes across all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I fell in the middle group where I enjoyed it. So
okay, great. So, as briefly mentioned, if you want to hear the longer version of that, I will also post the other segment. But for now, we're moving on. The next movie that I have seen that Mike has not yet is Bohemian Rhapsody, which is, of course, the biopic of Freddie Mercury and the rest of Queen, and in particular, including more of the rest of Queen than they might have otherwise, because that was actually part of the condition of how the movie got made, is that the surviving members of Queen were very involved. And then there's all sorts of stuff now about Bryan Singer, the director, too. There's a lot going on in the meta commentary around this movie. What I'll say about the movie specifically is that it's a perfect illustration of how if a movie starts well but ends badly, people don't like it. But if a movie starts badly and ends great, people like it. This movie is the latter. There's large chunks of the movie that are not very interesting and kind of slow, but boy, is it got a powerhouse finale. So, if you want to see a movie finish with an epic recreation of what is widely considered to be one of the greatest rock concerts of all time, then yeah, it's pretty good at doing that. The rest of it is mixed.
Yeah, and I know we had some discussion on the first one about, sort of the Bryan Singer thing, and I said, I'm not sure, it depends like on the level of what they're talking about, whether it influences this and all that. And you said, no, it was pretty awful. Like, I went and read into some of the accusations. It's pretty awful.
Mm-hmm.
So
Not to mention the fact that he was literally fired from this movie before filming was complete.
For something completely separate, though. Like, he was fired from the movie because he stopped coming to work.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that if you read between the lines, there's kind of it's a broad melange of things, and that was kind of the last straw of it.
Oh.
Yeah, because there was supposedly a whole thing.
We don't want him associated with it as we go into awards season.
Well, and also I think it was part of an ongoing pattern of behavior that they were just fed up with as well. Because his side of the story for why he stopped coming was, well, my mom was sick, and so I had to leave set, and they wouldn't let me, so I just went anyway, and yet everyone else is saying, so why were you in LA 3 days later then? So, okay. Anyway, a lot of that is hard to know. It's all behind-the-scenes stuff, but certainly is going to be part of the conversation about that movie as we go into the awards season, and may cost the movie some votes that it might have gotten otherwise.
Yeah.
But overall, I'll say that it is a mediocre movie that has some really great parts of it, is my opinion.
Okay. I will see this, so we will talk more.
Mm-hmm. So the next movie in this category that I have seen is Green Book, which is another movie that has had a little bit of a surprising meta conversation, meaning the conversation about the movie as opposed to, the movie itself. And part of that is that this movie is a perfectly acceptable example of a movie that they've made lots of, which is white guy learns how to be less racist by becoming friends with a black guy. there
Well,
are,
not just white guy, white person. I mean,
huh?
there's
Well, yeah. I mean, there's lots. Okay, yeah. In this movie, it's a guy.
right.
But to be sure, there are lots of movies that have been made with that sort of plot line, and I think this movie has gained some criticism for taking something that could have been a more interesting story if they had focused on, for example, the history of the actual Green Book, which was a travel guide for African American travelers in that time period to tell them, like, where can you stay, where can you eat without getting harassed or worse. And so talking about the actual history of that instead of being another story about a white guy becoming less racist, where he's clearly the protagonist. And I mean, we even see that in the nominations here, that Viggo Mortensen is in lead actor, Mahershala Ali is in supporting actor. But I saw it with my dad, and it's a feel-good movie, and it feels good, and there's great performances in it. It's fine. I think it was just frustrating to some people that this movie, as opposed to some of the other movies that are more telling stories more from the African American point of view, people were saying, like, why is this one? This is an ordinary, mediocre movie, not a great experimental one. Yeah, but it's fine. I didn't dislike it, but I also kind of wouldn't have put it on my own list for Best Picture nominations. All right, so we have both seen Black Panther and Roma, which we will talk about in detail later. But let us, for now, then move through some of the other movies that only one of us have seen.
We're gonna crush through all of the
Yeah.
one. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that way the discussions that are more likely to have spoilers and so on are going to be towards the end.
That makes sense. Yeah, as opposed to doing it category by category.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
roll through it. Got it.
Yeah. So just because, in the next category for the best animated feature, we have both seen Incredibles 2. We've both seen Isle of Dogs. I have seen Ralph Breaks the Internet and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Ralph Breaks the Internet, I was a little disappointed by, frankly. I mean, it's not terrible, but I just felt like if you're going to make a sequel to an incredible, Disney, Pixar movie, I want the story to really be there. And it didn't really feel like it was there here. They had some interesting ideas, but it didn't really feel like it ever coalesced into a solid theme. And then the ending climactic battle kind of goes on and on and on. It's got good stuff in it, but honestly, it didn't do it for me. I was disappointed. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, however, is the best animated movie I've seen in a long time, and it is my favorite of the nominated films this year in this category by a wide margin. In fact, it may be my favorite movie this year, not just animated.
Yeah, I've heard for the people who want what this movie delivers, that it is by far just absolutely nails it.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible on a number of levels. And what I'll say, too, is that one of the things that it accomplishes in a way that I wouldn't have thought possible to do as well as they did is to have a movie that simultaneously is very rewarding to people who have in-depth knowledge of comics lore around Spider-Man, and yet still be completely accessible to people who don't know any of that stuff. It's incredible that it manages that balance. I wouldn't have thought it could be done. But it does. So I would definitely, absolutely say everyone should see that one if you can.
Yes, I will. I have an opportunity later this month to see it before the Oscars, so I'm already booked.
Great. Okay, so as we scroll through some of these other categories, we're going to have repeats of some of the titles we've talked about. So we'll just hit the ones that are new as they come up. So for best director, we've kind of been through. Neither of us have seen Cold War yet, which is the only new title there. As we go into best actor, neither of us have seen At Eternity's Gate or A Star Is Born, which A Star Is Born was also in Best Picture. So no new ideas there or titles there. For Best Actress, I have now seen The Wife and Can You Ever Forgive Me? I saw both of those on the plane as I flew back from South Korea.
I knew you were hoping to nab some there.
Yeah, I did. And so I saw both of those on the plane. The Wife is a great performance in an otherwise kind of forgettable film, I think. I mean, it was an interesting premise. The idea is that we have a man who has just been awarded notified that he's won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and Glenn Close plays the wife of that character, and the story is kind of about the ensuing, media circuit of what happens when someone wins a Nobel Prize, but how does all of that revolve around her and her part in supporting him? And then there's turns and twists that you probably won't see coming. And her performance is pretty good. I didn't feel like at the end of the movie I had really been told anything. It's kind of just a character study. And so the plot is kind of a complicated situation, turns out to be still complicated, but in a different way by the end. And so it's like, okay, she's good in it, but I didn't really necessarily love the movie otherwise.
Okay.
Can You Ever Forgive Me is amazing for what it's doing. Like, not everybody is interested in a movie about a novelist who was once successful but is having trouble sticking with the market, especially because she does not have the personality type that lets her sort of network and self-promote and everything. She's kind of an asshole, to put it succinctly. And she gets involved in order to make money in forging of literary collectibles, like letters written by famous authors and stuff like that. And this is based on a true story, literally based on the book by this person who the main character is. So it's an autobiographical story about this series of events. And so Melissa McCarthy plays this actress, and there was a lot of stuff in it that hit really close to home for me. And, not that I see myself as the same as her character at all, but there's definitely some of the things that it covers were really powerful. She's amazing in it. I loved this movie. I love her in it.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we've both seen Roma, so we'll come back and talk more about that. You know what? I'm going to widen my little spreadsheet display here a little bit. So.
There you go.
Okay. Here we go. As we get to Best Supporting Actor, we've talked about... Can You Ever Forgive Me? Also has Richard E. Grant as this guy she meets and becomes kind of partner in crime, so to speak. He's also really good. It's also great. Adam Driver in Black Klansman he's really funny. He's got a good role in it. I liked him. And Mahershala Ali in Green Book, both performances are great in that movie, but I think that I was a little surprised to see him in supporting actor with Viggo in lead actor, which is probably Oscar politics in terms of just where they were submitted, but in the movie they feel like equal leads to me.
Right. And I talked a little bit about Sam Rockwell in Vice. You know,
Yeah.
he does a great job, and he over characterizes George Bush, which is on purpose for the point of the movie. You know, he kind of like they play Cheney very straight, and they play some of the people around him as very, and that's why they have like Steve Carell and Sam Rockwell, and they're playing these guys around him at like such a high pitch, and so he does a great job of that. You know, so.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I only realized sort of belatedly that my stated structure about us just going through and doing a capsule review, and then I started talking about each individual. What do you think? Does it make sense to kind of hit each one briefly as
we could be real quick, like as we kind of, you know, if we haven't talked about that person's like role, we should just hit real quick and just say, hey, this is why they're in here.
Okay.
And then move on. But even like the capsule, you know.
Okay. Well, so you want to jump back up to Best Actor then to do that for that category?
I mean, I think the only thing to say about Christian Bale is, you know, he's getting a lot of press for the way that he, you know, like sort of the mimicry part of it, like where he was like playing Cheney in the way that we all know him. Where I thought this movie, and he really delivered, is to play Cheney as a younger person and to show this the evolution into who he was, and in a, where you can kind of see how he becomes this person, but he's not the person that we saw on TV all the time.
Right.
You know, and I think that's a subtler part to the performance. So
very cool. So I briefly mentioned that in Green Book, I feel like both the leads give great performances. And so, you know, what I was saying about, you know, why is Viggo in Best Actor and Mahershala Ali in Supporting Actor? I mean, that's a question, but that's not to say that Viggo Mortensen doesn't put in a great performance. I think related to the meta commentary about the movie, he's given a couple of interviews that rubbed people the wrong way. But that said, I mean, he's good in the movie for sure. But then Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody, I think even though I doubt Bohemian Rhapsody will win a lot of the other major awards, Rami Malek might win the Best Actor because he's really good in it, and playing such a very specific person as Freddie Mercury and pulling it off as successfully as he does is certainly a pretty significant achievement, even if I feel like overall the movie doesn't feel to me like it tells me much I didn't know already about Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a two-horse race. I mean, this is Rami Malek versus Christian Bale. I mean, they won based on the Golden Globes. They were in different segments because the Golden Globes, you know, separate them.
Well, except that you're absolutely right. I'm not disagreeing, but it's so bizarre for Bohemian Rhapsody to win Best Drama and Green Book to win Comedy or Musical. It's weird.
I'm talking about the Best Actor part, but yes.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's this. I feel like this is a Christian Bale, Rami Malek race. I mean, no, and the thing is, the other people in here are very good. I haven't seen these other movies, but
just
from what I know,
the buzz.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think and then for Best Actress, you know, we'll come back to talk about Roma.
That a little bit,
yeah. So as we're jumping past, then get to Best Supporting Actress. You've seen Amy Adams in Vice.
So good. So she's so good. This is a comment that I had with my friend that I watched the movie, or from my friend when we left the movie, said, I feel like it made Cheney's wife like the real villain, and that's not a fair commentary of like the movie as a whole, but it's like you can see she is so good in like how they are symbiotic in how they move forward, that you can see how you could leave with that impression, and that is a testament to like how she played this character, because she doesn't seem because the whole movie, the movie doesn't make anybody a villain. The movie, I mean, you kind of leave with an impression, but to show her as so intrinsic in what Dick Cheney did, and that's why they left with that impression. So very good.
Yeah, I like Amy Adams.
Yeah, but she's definitely not the Cinderella in the real world, Amy Adams or whatever that movie was called.
Enchanted.
Enchanted, definitely not Enchanted.
Enchanted is such a good movie. If just as I know it's several years old by now, but people, if you haven't seen Enchanted, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for the rest of the best supporting actress, we're going to come back to Roma again. We haven't seen the others. Although I am going to see The Favorite this weekend.
I am definitely going to see that as well.
So for the next category, Best Original Screenplay, we talked about Green Book a little bit, and I don't think that I have anything else to say about the screenplay beyond what I said about the movie just in general already, which is to say it's fine. It's a story that has been told in very similar ways before. It tells it reasonably well here, even though I gather the family of Mahershala Ali's character, like the real guy that it was based on, didn't like the portrayal, but I'm not actually sure about the details there. But it's fine, but I also didn't think it was great, so I'm not sure I think it necessarily deserves the nomination. Not because it's bad, just because it's not really a standout either.
Yeah, I think I hit the main points on like why this was a great written script, like sort of the tones it hits.
For Vice.
For Vice. Sorry. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I'm reading the screen and talking about what I'm supposed to. With Adam McKay. I think he also wrote the Big Short, and while it is a different movie, a lot of the things that made that really good are in here too. The Big Short had a lot of sort of the dark comedy part, the uncomfortable pacing, a lot of breaking the fourth wall in places that like you wouldn't normally see it. Just sort of an odd mishmash of storytelling, like taking a lot of different types of storytelling and putting them into one movie. That's all present here. So well deserved to be on here.
Yeah. Okay. So for Best Adapted Screenplay, we have both seen The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yes.
So we'll talk more about that. But the
You're
Coen brothers.
smiling.
Yeah. Huh? What?
So you're already smiling.
Yeah. But
Anyway,
so Black Klansman and Can You Ever Forgive Me? I've seen both of those, and I definitely think that both of those, a lot of what I like about it is the story being told, and I think they're very well written. They're good screenplays. So, Best Foreign Film, we have both seen Roma, but we haven't seen any of the others yet, which we'll talk more about. Yeah. Although I have the opportunity, there's 3 of those are playing at my local art house theater, so I might get a chance to see a couple of those.
Because you're back in America.
Yeah. Best Original Score, we've both seen Black Panther. The score for Black Klansman, I don't know that I would have especially noticed the music if I hadn't watched the movie knowing it was nominated for score. It's good, but I guess it was certainly the type of score that is meant to sort of be subtler, like it doesn't call attention to itself. Oh, you know what? I just realized that it's not showing on our video here, but I did not indicate on the spreadsheet that I had seen Isle of Dogs. Yeah. So we'll talk more about this score for Isle of Dogs, but it's very much an example of the other type of score where you definitely notice the music in that movie.
Yes, I think I mentioned that on the last broadcast. Like it definitely advances the story. Anyway.
All right, so for Best Original Song, the only one of those that only one of us has seen is RBG with I'll Fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's the closing credit song. It's...
So what about the movie, though? Because I think it maybe comes up again in documentary.
Comes up one more time again. I guess I can just cover it here, and I'll probably cover what comes up again. I think it comes up in Best Documentary. It's the movie is interesting. It feels, so there's several movies on here that people are excited about, and I'm excited about because they were direct to TV or streaming,
Mm-hmm.
and they still, garnered these awards.
Yeah.
This was a direct to TV movie, um, but it feels like a direct to TV movie. It feels like like just a really well done TV documentary, which doesn't bad. I mean, it's not like you don't want to see that. It just doesn't. It didn't punch itself up into the echelon for me that was so good. I really loved seeing the interviews with her. She is actually, I mean, whip smart, really funny, even at the age that she is.
Mm-hmm.
That's all fun, kind of painting the history of how she got there. All interesting. But
Well,
as far as like pop,
yeah. It's always common, it seems, that whenever you have a Hollywood biopic type movie on the horizon, documentaries about the same subject come out.
yeah.
Kind of like the Ted Bundy is as a very different real life person,
Yeah.
but has the upcoming Hollywood
Both
movie.
lawyers.
Hmm?
Both were lawyers.
Was he a lawyer? I guess I didn't even know that.
Yeah, remember he used to represent himself. That was
I
how he
don't.
escaped all the time.
I am aware of Ted Bundy due to his most notorious types of actions, but I'm not well studied on the subject.
Well, you have many opportunities to become so based
Indeed,
on.
yes.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, let's keep moving.
Yeah. So anyway, the song though is just the end credits. So
Okay.
outside of the movie, it's like it's sort of unrelated. The song is great.
Well, I mean, I think that's common. Is that when these are best original song, lots of times they're at the end credits. Although Ballad of Buster Scruggs is a notable exception there.
Yes.
We'll talk more about that. Best production design. We've both seen Black Panther and Roma, and we'll talk more about those, but neither of us have seen any of the other three. And then best cinematography, same deal with Roma. We'll come back to that. Best costume design. We've both seen Black Panther and Ballad of Buster Scruggs. We'll come back to those. Best makeup and hairstyling. You've seen Vice, and it's.
I mean, I think now this is where it goes to the and I hate to call it mimicry because I don't want it to like decree what they're doing, but the part where they're trying to make them look like people we know what look like. That's why this is on here,
Yeah,
So.
I think that makes sense. As we get to best documentary feature, as you were just talking about RBG, was there anything else that you wanted to say about?
I feel like there's going to be something stronger in here. So it drove me to want to watch another one of these movies because I think there are stronger movies in here.
Okay.
That's all.
So next, best sound mixing. The only one of these that only one of us has seen is Bohemian Rhapsody, and especially given that its big set pieces are recreations of these rock concerts, sound mixing and editing both obviously play a big role in the experience of those scenes, and they're done really well. I mean, that's what the movie does well. Is those big set pieces. So sound editing, it's kind of the same movies more or less.
Yep, we get one change because Quiet Place is in there.
Yes, but we've both seen that, so we'll come back and talk more about that. Best visual effects. I've seen Avengers: Infinity War, Christopher Robin, and Solo: A Star Wars Story. We've both seen Ready Player One. I saw Christopher Robin on the plane as well. And boy, I don't know who that movie's supposed to be for because it's super weird. So let's make a movie that is kind of too silly and childlike for the adults experiencing genuine nostalgia for Winnie the Pooh, and yet too sort of melancholy and adult for kids who would just be enjoying it on the silly level. It's a very strange story. I mean, in some ways, it's trying for the same tone that the Paddington movies succeeded at producing.
What?
Have you not seen the Paddington movies?
I have, but what you just described does not sound like the Paddington movies.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, is that it feels like it was trying for that, but it erred on the too sad side.
Yeah, because I was going to say, Paddington movies they're not super, yeah. They hit, I get what you mean by they hit the balance of, they have the fun, you could be a kid, have no knowledge of Paddington, and you could enjoy the ride of the movie. You could have the nostalgia part. You could be an adult and understand sort of the complexities of, like in Paddington 2, like of the going to jail and like well, do I want to help break them out? Like, will they be, will they actually be good guys on the outside, or will I be bringing, like that sort of dialogue that kids aren't getting. Yeah, I get it.
Well,
yeah.
and also just the idea that there is a heaviness to the world that is counterbalanced by the essential goodness of Paddington and other good characters, right?
Right, because he has people who are, essentially racist against him, and all that. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Whereas Winnie the Pooh and that cast of characters is like, I love them. I do have powerful nostalgia for those characters. But they are inherently more about things like insecurity and arrogance and know-it-alls and obnoxiousness. I mean, like, they're all lovable versions of personal faults, right? I mean, think about Piglet's scared of everything. Tigger is obnoxious and outgoing all the time, even when it's inappropriate. Rabbit's a know-it-all. Winnie the Pooh is just kind of, lazy and, a bear of very little brain and just wants to eat honey all the time. I mean, I love those characters, but they don't fit as well in that, essential wholesome goodness versus the real world complexity.
Yeah, that's interesting how you described it, because it almost feels like it was like the original, like, Inside Out. You know? Like these are all of your human emotions and flaws projected. Whereas in the Inside Out movie, they were like actually like the guys working around in your brain. Isn't that the name of the movie?
Yeah, Inside Out.
Yeah. This is actually a more of a projection instead of an internal. But
well, and so imagine that imagine Inside Out. So imagine they made Inside Out 2. And the story is that the girl, I don't even actually remember the girl's name from Inside Out, but imagine she's a grown-up now and she's all serious all the time, and somehow the way that she has to learn to experience joy again like she did with a little kid is for the little personification of joy to literally come out of her head and be in the real world with her and remind her to act like a little kid again. That would be weird, right? Yeah,
I mean, by that description, Inside Out is a much more mature movie because it goes through the whole Bing Bong.
Yeah.
Death.
Yeah.
But anyway, we probably went too far on a movie that I haven't seen.
It's got some interesting stuff in it. It just hits a very strange tone, and I'm not surprised at all that it didn't do well because it doesn't know what it's trying to be. Anyway, that's Christopher Robin. Avengers Infinity War has exactly what you would expect in it, which is great special effects of all that stuff.
Meme worthy.
Huh?
Meme worthy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, there's certainly some of the things that happen in there for sure that became memes. And then Solo Star Wars Story is the same thing. It's like it's good, but it's kind of good in the ways that you expect it to be good. It's hard anymore, I think, for movies to shock us with visual effects. What I will say, actually, is that Christopher Robin being on this list does make perfect sense because it is actually something that I feel like we don't see as much, which is when the Winnie the Pooh characters are like walking around interacting with the real actors, they look like alive stuffed animals there in the room with the actor. That's what it looks like on screen. And so it's well done in that regard. Okay, so film editing. We kind of talked about Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Green Book already. The one thing I'll bring back up.
Or
Oh, yeah. The one thing I will bring back up, though, about Bohemian Rhapsody is that although I think the concert sequences are edited very well, there's one particular scene in it that has kind of made the rounds on Twitter from people saying, this movie is nominated for Best Editing. And it's this early in the movie scene where they're meeting at a cafe, and it is literally like 25 cuts in 30 seconds. And half of those cuts are just like, cut to this actor going, and then cut to someone else, and then it's just like it's really all over the place. So it's a bizarre scene, especially taken out of context. I didn't notice it when I saw the movie, but you watch it and you're going like, yeah, that doesn't look like a movie that I think should win Best Editing.
yeah, and
But,
the Vice one. I mean, we kind of talked about with when I talked about the writing. It's the same thing. It's that it hits a sort of off kilter pacing,
mm-hmm.
and the editing is part of that. The writing is part of that. So,
Yeah. So
all right, now the
Now-
real part.
Yeah, having gone through some of those high level things, let's talk about the movies that we've both seen. And depending on how long we go for some of these, we may not get to all of the ones that we have both seen this time. But that's okay, because certainly we're covering not only movies we've seen since the nominations, but the movies we had seen before that. And so it's a kind of bigger list than we'll go through for the next update. So it's all going to be fine. I promise everyone it will be fine. It's all fine.
Yep, we'll do what we need to do.
So, do you want to start with Black Panther then?
Black Panther.
Before we jump in, I want to just provide a little bit of context here in terms of, I think it'll be interesting to discuss this movie between the two of us, because I have seen all of the Marvel movies,